Hello, and welcome to today's session. This is a series called Parabytes that we have been doing. My name is Tracy Belfield, and I am a field training coordinator with the Kentucky Autism Training Center. Today, our topic is going to be the roles and responsibilities of paraprofessionals. First, I want to welcome you to today's presentation. As paraprofessionals, you guys are the key of all that we do. Teachers and therapists really could not do everything and provide all the supports that our students need without you. So please, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything that you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Know that you play, like I said, a critical role in everything that we do to make our students successful. So let's talk a little bit about the roles and responsibilities. The first thing that we need to do is look at what is the teacher's responsibility in supporting you as paraprofessionals. The first thing is, as a classroom teacher, we need to make sure that you are properly trained and that we're coaching you to improve in whatever skills that we need you to improve in. Most of you did not go to school to work with special education populations. So again, you don't necessarily come in with a set of skills already developed, although many of you have very natural talents that are very welcomed into the classroom. And we've got to make sure that we are, in fact, training and coaching you. So in part of doing that, we need to make sure that we, the teachers, are planning activities and that we are effectively communicating the responsibilities that we want you to have as part of that instructional process. So there's a lot of kind of weight and responsibility on that teacher to make sure that they're effectively planning and communicating that. And then they are also going to be the ones that are directing and monitoring that instruction of the students. So even though they may have you doing tasks with them, they're still ultimately responsible for all of that. So they need to be checking in with you, which is why communication is so important. And they just need to make sure that the student is, in fact, making progress. And if they're not making progress, do some directing of how to change that instructional supports or accommodations or whatnot that might be needed. And this is why communication is so very important. And then if you are going to be going into any general education setting, this could be specials like music, art, PE, but it could also be those core content areas of reading, math, science, social studies. So anytime you're going into the general education setting, it's really the teacher's responsibility to communicate to the general education teachers what your role is in the classroom. This really helps prevent any miscommunication or misalignment with what the expectations are. So if the classroom teacher can really just communicate that with the general education teacher and make sure that everybody's on the same page, it typically saves a lot of heartache for people. Of course, the teacher should offer encouragement, let you know what your strengths are, let you know what you're doing really well. They should answer any questions that you have. You're going to have questions. And just to be very transparent, they may not always have all the answers. They may have to say, you know what, that's a great question. Let me get back to you. And they may need to go check with a colleague or a therapist to get the answer for that. The teacher also needs to make sure that they're sharing any necessary student information with you. We always want to respect student privacy as much as possible, but as a paraprofessional, you're kind of in a need to know position. So as any necessary information they need to be sharing with you. So if medical situations have changed, again, how we transfer a student might need to change. And so they need to share that with you. If IEP goals have changed because an ARC has met and made those changes, obviously that would need to be communicated. Accommodation changes. So just anything that's going to affect how you interact and provide supports for a student needs to be communicated with you. Communication is key in all of this. It really takes both parties talking. And so, really, you all need to be meeting periodically to help build that communication, help build the strength of the team, and just let each partner to be able to share what they need to share. I know it's hard because most paraprofessionals are only there during student time, so trying to figure out when you can meet may be challenging, but I really encourage you to find some time that you all can meet and have those discussions. So once we know what the teacher's responsibilities are to you as the paraprofessional, let's clarify exactly what your role is as a paraprofessional. So your role is to assist the teacher, but it's assisting them to achieve the learning goals for the student. So it's really all about the student and supporting them in achieving their goals. So you're going to do that by carrying out those tasks and assignments as given by the teacher, which is why I kind of went through all those roles and responsibilities from the teacher to you so that you do know how to help the student achieve their goal. So again, you're really there for the student, but you're going to be doing that kind of through the teacher. We told what the responsibilities are to the teacher, to you, the paraeducator or paraprofessional. So let's talk about what your role is to the teacher. It's going to be very important that you show initiative. While the teacher needs to communicate and give direction of what they need and what the responsibilities are during different academic times and things like that, they are not going to be able to prepare you for every what if scenario. Things are going to change. It's just real world, particularly when we're working with our special needs and autistic population. So you're going to have to show some initiative. If an activity goes faster than maybe the teacher thought, you're going to have to know how to bring in some other activities or to extend an activity. If a student is struggling a little bit with an activity, hopefully you're going to develop skills to know how to scaffold that and make it easier or more challenging for them depending on how they're going. You can't just sit there and wait to be told what to do next. You're going to have to take that initiative and kind of figure those things out. And the teacher's always going to be kind of the lead, so you need to follow their lead. Again, hopefully they're sharing plans with you and they're communicating all of that. But like I just said, real world happens, things change. Sometimes a lesson doesn't go quite as we planned when we did write out our lesson plans, or maybe a student comes in and they're not feeling well that day, and we kind of have to change things. You kind of just have to go with the teacher's lead and know that the teacher has a reason for whatever change is happening and to follow that to the best of your ability. If you have questions, again, that's why getting together and talking through that stuff is going to be important. You don't want to do it in the moment. You want to do it like at the end of the day or whenever it would be appropriate for you all to have that conversation. Behavior plans. So sometimes students have behaviors that are a little bit more challenging than just the IEP can cover. And so they may have an additional plan called a behavior intervention plan that's developed. That's kind of the formal plan. There are sometimes informal plans as well, but we know for our autistic learners that consistency is really, really important. We also know that if it is a formal plan, it is a legal because it's attached to the IEP. So then we have that obligation to follow through with it on that point as well. To me, the most important thing is just we know students need consistency. That's a proven fact. They're going to make progress better. So it's very important that we have this written behavior plan and that we're all following it the same way. We're doing the reinforcement the way it's saying. We're redirecting students the way they say it. We're, just following the behavior plan as it was created. Again, if you have questions, that's going to be for a later time, but you're going to follow the plan in the moment. You're going to help assist in collecting data while the teacher is ultimately going to make the instructional changes and things that need to be made based on that data. You are, in fact, going to be collecting that data, and the teacher should guide you in that. Communication is going to be huge. So any challenges that are happening, it may be challenges that the student themselves are having. If you're taking them out to a gen ed classroom, you may notice some challenges that peers are having interacting with your students. You may notice some challenges that maybe the gen ed teacher is having in appropriately supporting the student. Those things need to be communicated back to your lead teacher so that they can help overcome those obstacles and figure out how we can best support the students so that everybody can be successful in that. Also, make sure that we're communicating any opportunities and experiences that we're aware of. So again, maybe if you're in a gen ed class and you see an opportunity for your student to be more successful, we need to make sure that we're sharing those situations because the lead teacher can't be there 24/7. And so they don't always know all the intricate details that are happening and maybe did not plan for that opportunity. And so we don't want to miss those. We do want to talk through them and figure out how we can maximize them. Same thing with experiences. Sometimes there's things going on that the lead teacher may just not be aware of. So we need to think about those things. Kind of already talked about following teachers' lead a little bit. Life is going to happen. So we are going to have to be, and this is for all staff members, we've got to be flexible and go with the flow. Change is hard for our students. And be honest, change is hard for many of us. Many of us thrive off of structure and knowing what to expect. But it is important that we're flexible, that we don't get flustered. Our students are going to pick that up. And so we want to remain calm. And like I said, just kind of go with the flow. We want to make sure that all of our learners are engaged in activities, that they're getting something out of what we're doing. So again, some students may need manipulatives while others are doing more pencil paper based tasks. But whatever that is, we need to engage them. Hopefully, the teacher's kind of giving you some lead on that so that you know what's going on. If there are things that you don't understand the directions that were given to you, you don't understand why we're doing something, it is okay. And you want to do this privately, not in front of students, but ask for clarification. Explain why you're confused or what you don't understand so that they can give that to you. And there might be opportunities where additional training is going to be needed. So again, if you're not comfortable with something, ask if there's an opportunity for trainings. Hopefully, just by watching this series, you're gaining new skills and broadening your understanding of why we do some of the things that we do. The Kentucky Autism Training Center has lots of videos that you could go ahead and learn on your own. But again, talk to your teacher if you need more training and make sure that you're getting that so that you can be the best paraprofessional that you can be. So now that we've kind of talked about that, let's talk about what is not your role as a paraeducator. And sometimes I think we really miss saying these things, and it's really important. Some of you may not know, I actually started my educational career as a paraprofessional before becoming a teacher. So many of these struggles I completely understand and can remember going through them myself. So as a paraeducator, your role is not to support only one student. Now, a few of you may be one-on-one paraprofessionals, and if so, yes, that's your student that you're actually assigned to. But most of you are classroom assistants, instructional assistants, where you're actually there to support all students within that classroom. So again, you're typically not there to support just one student. We want to make sure that we are not communicating for the student. We want the student to be actively communicating for themselves. They need to be answering questions for themselves. We need to be encouraging them to self-advocate for themselves. If somebody asks them a question, again, we need to encourage them to use whatever mode of communication they use to respond. We shouldn't answer for them. I know sometimes people would come up to me when I was with my students and be like, oh, what's her name? Well, she's right there. Ask her what her name is because she's able to answer you. We need to teach those skills, not only for our students, but for other people. They don't realize that they're kind of being disrespectful to our student to just ask questions about them with the student right there. Also, we are not there to do the work for them. They can't learn it if they don't do it. We are there to help support them, provide accommodations, provide, materials that they may need, make the materials more accessible for them, but we are not there to do the work for them. Again, you've already heard me mention data. If you're doing the work for them and therefore they're getting really high marks, the teacher may think that they're ready for the next skill, or even the parents, when we get ready to have an IEP meeting, thinks the student is ready for the next skill. And it's really because we've been doing too much of the work for this student. So we just need to be mindful of that and make sure that the student is doing their work and that we're not providing too much for them, which kind of goes into the next one. We don't want to over prompt. I know we have a whole parabyte that we did on prompting, and we discussed over prompting and things like that. Our goal is to make our students as independent as possible. Even our littles that we have. I go into preschool rooms, so I'm working sometimes with 3 and 4 year olds, but those of you in K-12, you're 5 and 6 year olds. Yes, they're little and they're cute and they're adorable, and we want to just kind of love on them and help them be successful. But we've got to remember they are going to grow up and be adults. So, what can we do to start getting them on that path? And we don't want to over prompt them. Make sure you're using that prompt hierarchy that we talked about in our other video. If you missed it, go back and watch that video. You're also not there to run errands for somebody. Remember, you're there to assist the teacher in helping in the student's learning. So you're not the designated copy person, check the mailbox, go get somebody coffee person. Now, that's not to say, because again, I was a paraprofessional. Sometimes I needed out of the room for 5 minutes. Like I just needed to take a breath, have a moment to myself. So I might say, hey, can I go make that copy for you? That is okay. But that is not your primary mission when you're at work. You're not there to be the errand person. And again, sometimes the gen ed thinks the paraprofessionals are there to kind of run errands. So that's why the lead teacher kind of explaining what your role is so important. Paraprofessionals obviously do not write IEPs. Again, that's the lead teacher and the therapist's responsibilities. I used to share my IEPs with my paraprofessionals so that they knew what was in them and what we were working on and what the student's present level was, because that was all information they needed to help my students be successful. Or sometimes I would even share when maybe I was drafting or getting ideas together of, I think this might be the next skill. What do you think? You're also, and this is going to be really hard too, for some people to hear, there to communicate with the parent. And this is hard because, again, a lot of our rural communities are very small. Everybody knows everybody. We went to high school together. We go to church together, all of these things. But it really needs to be the licensed lead teacher or the certified related service provider that is doing the communicating with the parent. Because, again, they just know all the pieces that are in there. As much as you love and want what's best for that student, you may not know everything that's going on with that student because, again, there may just be some need to know things that you're not privy to. Now, I know dismissal time is probably the biggest time that this happens because while you're walking little Johnny out to, the car rider line, mom goes, oh, how was his day? It is fine to keep it really short and go, oh, he had a great day. It was a little bit of a rough day. Miss Smith is going to call and follow up with you on that. Like you should not be getting into the specifics of, well, when we went to the library today, he had a complete meltdown and was in the middle of the library and it went on for 25 minutes and he kicked this kid and he smacked Miss Smith. That's not your role. Like I said, you really want to keep your communication as far as what's going on in the classroom and things like that within the school setting to the teacher or the related service provider. And then I would check what your district and school policies are on phone usage. And I just make note of this because there are many districts and schools that have policies of you're not allowed to take pictures of students on your personal cell phones. And again, people, oh, that's really cute, and they want to take a picture. Obviously, most districts are going to have a don't use your phone on campus when you're working because you need to be all eyes and completely focused on the student while you're there, and you don't need to be talking on the phone. But just make sure you know what your district and school policy is on that so that you can follow that. I think we've had it in one of our other parabytes, but I just love it, and I would almost put it in every single one. It speaks to me again as a former paraeducator myself. It makes me kind of think back to things that I did with my students and did I do the best for them? So, of course, here you see a young boy there and he has an assistant standing behind him. Then you kind of see this force field and the other students are all standing there like, ooh. And it says, Joey noticed a mysterious force field around his assistant that children could not break through. And just make sure that we are not hovering, that we're not providing too much support. Um, I mean, if you think about an elementary student, are other elementary students gonna want to come up and talk to them if there's always an adult hovering right there and interacting? The same thing with our preteen and teenagers. Let's be honest, they like to have their little private teenage chats, and they're not going to do that if there's an adult right there and hovering. And so we're really kind of preventing those peer relationships from building. It just creates all this stigma that we don't want to do. So we need to make sure that we are not hovering. And again, this is why you need to remember you're not there just for one student, you're there for lots of students. Even when you're in a gen ed setting, help non-special ed students. That's completely fine, just obviously within parameters, but be mindful of this. I think it's a powerful cartoon to keep in mind. So let's talk about some things that are your role. I know this can be a very broad type topic. So your role obviously is to accept and complete the tasks that your lead teacher gives you. It's very important that we're respectful to each other. And I mean, that goes both ways, both paraeducator as well as teacher and other certified personnel. We need to work collaboratively together. It takes the whole team. None of us can do what we do for our students in isolation. It takes the special education teacher, the gen ed teacher, the speech therapist, OT, PT, the paraprofessionals, the bus drivers, I mean, the lunchroom monitors. It takes everybody respecting each other and their expertise and working collaboratively for the success of our students. Within that, of course, we want to maintain a positive and caring environment. And we're all there for the kids. We're all there to help them reach their potential. If there's misunderstandings, if there's hard feelings about something, if there's questions, we need to communicate. We need to say, hey, I don't understand why you did that today. Can you explain that to me? Of course, you're going to follow the policies of your school and district. That's kind of a given. When you are working, you need to make sure you give your students your full attention. Our students can be very quick and even sometimes sneaky. We have many students that are prone to elopement and wandering, so we've got to keep a close eye on them. I used to have one student, and all it would take is you to turn around to pick up a pencil or pen or paper. And within that 30 seconds, she's reaching over and going to pinch another student. And you've just got to be as fully present as possible. Things will still happen, sadly, but you don't want it to be because you are neglecting to give your full attention to your students that you are working with. Of course, we're going to model appropriate behavior. We're going to praise students, very specific praise for their correct behavior. That's part of that reinforcement. And try to avoid saying just good job, but good job for sitting in your seat and waiting your turn. Good job for picking up your pencil and writing your name on your paper. Promoting independence, you've already heard me mention that once. It's very important that we let these students know that they can do things and to let them be as independent as possible. Just promote that. Respecting the student and dignity. This is a big one, and I'll be honest, I used to see it in classrooms. I feel like we are getting better with this. And again, there's times that I can look back and I could have done better with this too. Some common things is like going to the nurse for medicines. Make sure we're not kind of saying that stuff across the classroom. That's nobody else's business. So make sure, like if you're asking, hey, is it time for Johnny to go to the nurse's station, get his medicine? You need to walk over, hey, Miss Smith, I think it's time for Johnny to go. And be respectful with that. Same thing with kind of changing students. We don't need to be yelling across the room, hey, is it time for Johnny's diaper to get changed? I need to walk over. Hey, Miss Smith, I think it's time for Johnny to get changed. I'm going to take him to the bathroom and take care of that. And then just understanding the student's abilities. And this kind of comes with that information that you need to know about them, being a little bit familiar with those IEPs, asking for those questions of understanding. Again, we want to promote that independence, but we need to know where their ability levels are to know what can they do for themselves, what do they need assistance on, and know that that's forever changing. So obviously, wherever we were at the beginning of the school year, we are now over halfway through the school year. They have learned new skills, and we got to make sure that we are backing off in that, but that we're also not expecting to do things that they are not developmentally ready for. It takes a lot of communication and talking through that to understand where they are with everything. Let's look at some examples. So some things that you may do, and again, obviously this is not a full inclusive list, but in an elementary classroom, for many of our students, you're probably going to be helping them in using their visual schedules. You're going to be helping them in using timers and understanding when the timer goes off. What does that mean? Transitions are usually difficult for our students, so you're going to be helping them get supportive and take their materials or whatever, cleaning up, those type of things, transitioning from activity to activity. You're going to be helping to implement sensory breaks. Some of those sensory breaks are going to be within the classroom, whether it's a sensory corner or they have a sensory box. Some schools have sensory room on a student schedule. They may have assigned times that they go, and you may be the person that goes with that student to the sensory room and utilizes those things. Again, understanding that. You're going to help to facilitate peer interactions. We want them interacting with their peers. So, this can sometimes, again, making sure that we're not hovering and standing there, but sometimes it's encouraging little Susie, go ask Johnny if he wants to build a house with you or race cars or go down the slide. We just want to help encourage and facilitate those things. Or, encourage them to come over and be like, oh, look what Johnny did, because sometimes their perception of what our students can do is not accurate. We need to kind of show and highlight our students as well. And then supporting their communication systems. We are getting more and more students who are using alternative type communication devices. So we actually are going to have Laura Miller presenting with us here very soon on a Parabyte series, and she'll talk a little bit more about how you can specifically support students with those type of devices and things like that. Be looking for that training to come soon. All right, so now let's look at our middle school classrooms. So again, each student's different. You still may be doing some of that stuff that you had to do kind of at the elementary level, but some things that we start looking at the middle school level and that often paras are helping to support is executive functioning skills. So that's a lot of the organization, time management, things like that. You may have to help your student create a checklist so that they can start managing themselves of what materials do they need to take to art class. At what time do they do those things? Peer interaction is still a huge thing. So you may be facilitating some social skills group, and the teacher is going to help you know what that needs to look like and provide the materials and things like that. But you're going to likely be facilitating some type of social skills group. You're going to continue managing sensory needs, again, across settings, because many times students are going out into different environments. They may have a sensory box that they're able to access. So we may need to, like I said, remind them and prompt them of those things. Supporting organization of materials. So again, that kind of goes back up like with executive functioning skills. If they're going to different classes, there's different materials that they need. They may need some help with organizing that and keeping their papers, whether it's a binder system that they have or again, a pencil box or something. You may be supporting that. And kind of like I talked about earlier with behavior intervention plans, you may be implementing those. So just something to kind of look for and to be mindful with. And then our high school level people. Once students get into high school, obviously they are getting very close, and we only have a few more years before they're going to be aging out and leaving us and kind of entering the real world. A lot of supports and skills that we start working on are supporting those pre-vocational and vocational skills. There's a good chance that you may be working on some of that stuff. You may also be helping with some life skills things. So again, there may be some cooking classes, there might be some housekeeping type classes, there might be some yard maintenance type classes, just a variety of life skills things. You may be facilitating community-based instruction. You may be going out into the community a little bit. I know our local high school here has a restaurant right next door to it. They also have a very small shopping center right next door to it. So sometimes pairs are assigned to students and they go out to those places to order lunch, to go shopping. Maybe they're preparing a meal or a snack. They have their shopping list. And like I said, the pair is the one that kind of helps facilitate that and takes them on that outing so that they can do that community-based instruction and kind of generalize some of those skills that they've learned. We're continuing to support their self-advocacy skills. Again, it's just more important the older they get because pretty soon they are not going to have all the supports that they have in a school setting as they transition to adulthood. And then within the IEP, there is actually transition plans. So again, if teachers are sharing IEPs with you, you may be familiar with that, but there's goals within that. So of course, you're going to help implement those as well. So like you can see, there's lots of different things that paraprofessionals do. Again, you guys are such a valuable part of the committee and what we do to support our students and to make them as independent and successful as possible. Please know we appreciate everything that you do, but communication is huge. If you have questions, if something's not clear, talk through it. Don't let it just sit there and fester. If you will, take out your cell phone and scan this QR code, or you can enter in the link there with the bit.ly KATC online 2425 and complete that short evaluation. It just lets us know what we're doing well, what we need to work on. We do a quarterly drawing, and so that's optional if you would like to put your name in for that, and it'll ask that as you go through the evaluation. And I'll give you just another second to scan that. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us for another Parabyte. We look forward to seeing you again next month. We have Laura Miller coming up on communication, I know. And then there's another topic. I'm not quite sure what we are going to do yet. I've got to look at y'all's surveys results. But I love having you all here. And again, thank you for everything that you do. You are so appreciated. You all need anything? Give us a holler.